Hello, fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be discussing another short story in my little anthology that I'm reading here called Horror Times 10, which is edited by Alden H. Norton and includes author intros by Sam Moskowitz. And this time we're going to be talking about August Derleth, and we're going to be talking about The Lonesome Place. Of the three stories I'm going to cover from this book, I think this one wins out as my favorite. I really enjoyed this. Mainly because I'm kind of a sucker for the nostalgia of my youth, which I think most of us are, and this really hits on that and is told in an incredibly scary but beautiful way. So what is this about? This is about a 7-year-old boy living in a small town who lives a couple of blocks down, maybe even just a block down from a grain elevator. You don't hear grain elevators talked about anymore, but there was one near our small town. My great-grandfather ran it there, the grain elevator, and that's where they'd weigh. And it was also part of a spur, so the trains could come by and they'd just unload the grain onto the trains. Really cool. There's still a ruin of it. You can see my grandfather here with it back in the day when he worked on it, and you can see the ruin of it that's left now, and hopefully I can find a picture with me in it by this ruin. Anyway, it was very cool just because there was a grain elevator in our town that was kind of big in my life, so I liked that it was about a grain elevator. This is the first story that's ever been kind of a haunted grain elevator, and I thought that was really cool. But anyway, there's this kid, and he's 7 years old, and his mother constantly makes him run into town to buy whatever she's forgotten from the store, and he is terrified of the grain elevator because he considers it a lonesome place, a place where at night when you walk by it or are in it or around it, that it becomes terrifying. During the day, it's not scary to him at all, but at night, it is a lonesome place, a place of great fear. And what this kid does is, when he walks first to town, there's still a little bit of sun. It's kind of a pale white light, so it's not that scary of a place. But when he's coming back from town, he always just books it past the grain elevator. And he has a friend who also is terrified of the grain elevator and also often has to walk past it. And they start talking about it at school. But one of the cool things about this story is it starts out with the narrative looking back. So we know it's him looking back at his youth. And he says, "Me and my buddy wouldn't be guilty for murder if my mom wouldn't have made me run past this grain elevator every day." So right away you're like, whoa, this is a murderer. This is a story that is a confession of murder. So you're as you're reading through this, you're constantly waiting for this murder. And my brain was going all these different ways to try to figure out how these kids murdered somebody there at the grain elevator. A really great tactic that Derleth used to keep us reading into this story. But anyway, these two kids they don't have to run past it together, of course. They go at different times, depending on when their parents send them. But they start describing what this creature looks like and where it was. And the kid says there's no face on this creature. And once he sees his foot, and he says it's like a turtle's foot, flat, with claws. And they're constantly asking each other, did they see it? Did it come after him? Our narrator is running past one time and he swears he sees it in the back. And when the two kids go in the day to look at it, sure enough, there's these log piles that have been knocked over in the back. And they just know this thing is living there and it only comes out at night. And that if they are too slow, they are going to be attacked and eaten. And then they start to grow up. And I'm going to stop there for just a minute and leave it. Of course, we're going to be super interested in continuing on the story because we're wondering who did they murder. But let's stop for just a second and look at the publication history of this story. So, this first came out in Famous Fantastic Mysteries in February of 1948. And this cover artist was Virgil Finlay, which is interesting because he was the cover artist for a couple of the H.P. Lovecraft ones that we talked about last video that was also a story from this book. Next, it came out in Night's Yawning Peal, A Ghostly Company, and this is an Arkham House publication by August Derleth. And that came out in 1952. And then in 1962, 10 years later, Lonesome Places came out. And that, of course, is another short story collection by August Derleth that included this. The cover of this one is by Gary Gore and Clarence J. Laughlin. And then it came out in Horror Times 10. And again, we don't know who the cover artist for this is. But it's really wild, wild art. The way that Derleth describes childhood fear is incredible. And the way that he ties it to small town is also incredible for me. Because I grew up in a small town and we used to scare the crap out of each other in so many different ways. For instance, after the sun would go down, you could walk within 10 minutes to the local cemetery, which had been there since the 1870s. And there was a rumor that there was this telephone line that went into the ground so there was a telephone pole and then this wire went into the ground, and people, specifically my uncles, would say if you put your ear up to that you could hear the dead speak. And there was just so much stuff like that, and I'm very happy that I grew up in this way, because it really made me appreciate horror. And I think that August Derleth is hearkening back to that. There's a nostalgia in this story that I find really beautiful. And then he does what I consider his particular brilliance, and that is that he takes this nostalgic theme and ties it very literally and physically into the story. So there will be spoilers from here on out. It's a very quick read. Horror Babble might have done this one as well. As these two boys grow up, they cease thinking about the scary monster at the grain elevator. And he writes about it almost as if they've kind of let a loved one down. And slowly they start losing that fear. It becomes less an important part of their life. And to Derleth, I think this was very sad. And then, once they're adults and have left their lonesome place lonely, a kid is killed. And our main narrator is able to run and see the body before the police or the investigators get there. And the body is, the head is smashed, and he realizes that this is his monster. He and his buddy's monster, and they both realize this, did this, killed this kid, that they created this monster out of childhood wonder and the excitement of childhood fear. They created this monster, and they lived and breathed this monster for a large chunk of their young lives, and then they abandoned it. And that abandonment, they feel, makes them responsible for the killing of this kid, and that is why they are guilty of murder. Incredible. Incredible. What a brilliant way to quite literally personify childhood wonder, the creation of this beast. One like it, let's see if I can just grab this. I can. This kind of reminds me of Zena Henderson's The Anything Box. So a specific short story in here, and that is called Hush. And I think this was made into a Tales from the Dark Side episode. And in this, a babysitter and a young child are playing together and using their imagination. And the young child comes up with a creature that eats all sound, that hates sound and eats all sound. and this creature is born at that moment of childhood wonder and starts attacking the town, and it is absolutely incredible. So I don't know, Zena Henderson's definitely came second, but it just reminded me of that. I love this idea of taking a theme in a story and then finding a way to make the theme become the story, personify the story. And I think Derleth did an incredible job of that in this one. Absolutely wonderful read. My favorite of the bunch so far from Horror Times 10. But only by a little bit. All of these stories have been good. The next one we'll be talking about is Robert E. Howard's The Dead Remember. So you can look forward to that further on in the week. Anyway, absolutely recommend this August Derleth story, The Lonesome Place. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please click like. And if you'd like this content, please click subscribe, because we'll be making a lot more of it in the future. And if you'd like to help out this channel, please go check out our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching.